Hello and welcome to The Promised Land, a show about Manchester United and part of the 90 Min Podcast Network. A little bit of a different one for you today. Rob and I like to sit in the realism. We like to tell it. We don't go overreactionary. That is our thing. But we owe you a show. And today we have decided to pick our way to pick the signings that will take Man United back to the Promised Land, no matter how dreamy. Obviously, we all know the takeover scenario currently. It could go one of several ways. The conversation could change based on who ends up owning the club by the start of next season. But we'll just look at the big picture and live in dreamland for this show. So please don't say you're being ridiculous, because that is the idea of the show. We're just going to engage in it for once. Rob is very excited.
Very. Can you not tell how excited I am about this show?
He's for you listening on audio, he is showing his teeth with a smile. And we'll see. Let's see what we agree on, Rob. Let's see what we don't. We also asked you listening, whether on YouTube or audio, to do this for us last week. And we have seen some of your comments. So we wanted to do a show on that, basically. We started talking about the positions we would like to strengthen, but we'll put some players to those positions today. Subscribe wherever you get your pods. Watch on YouTube as well. We usually run twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays, but as I said, this is a bonus show on a Wednesday. Head over to the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and follow us on Twitter @_Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B, and @PromiseLandMU for the show. So this is Man United at a crossroads. United are currently fourth in the league as we record this, looking good for Champions League. We're going to live in a world where United managed to do it, get top four, get through, built on a good first season for Erik ten Hag. And we're going to bring in the players that we think can get Man United challenging and winning the Premier League title and competing in the last stages of the Champions League. That's where the show name comes from, by the way. Clive Tilsley said in 99, Manchester United have reached the Promised Land, and that's where the show comes from. So can United ever get back there? We're going to try and do it. So, Rob, how should we do it?
Well, I think today we're going to look at this in kind of an open-minded way, first and foremost. So kind of not many rules. We're not going to sit here and talk about agents' fees and how do we work all this out. It's not up to us to sign checks, is it? Just up to us to scout and find the players. So I think the reason why we're kind of doing this now as well is that over the course of the season, even if it just ends and it's not what we wanted, or like you just said there, do we get top four? Do we not? We can imagine that maybe we will. That Man United have moved on from where we were 6 months, 12 months ago. We're definitely in a different place and there's more optimism. And I think when you look at the path Arsenal have taken over 2, 3, 4 years, that there's now kind of path there for another club to kind of do a similar thing. You know, how do you build your project? You know, it doesn't have to all be Man City money. It doesn't have to be like that. But how do you now get back to the Promised Land, which would be a title challenge? Because I think that's the meat and potatoes here, isn't it? It's about how do you finally get there and how close are you truly? So I think this year we've all been pleasantly surprised how close to maybe the top two Man United are, even though we're still not exactly very close. But we're a lot closer than we were, weren't we? So we're going to talk about today about players in every department, goalkeeper, defender, midfield and attack, that we believe get Man United back to the Promised Land as quick as next season.
So where do you want to start from? Do you want to start in order of priority targets, or do you want to start by position?
No, let's make it nice and simple for a viewer and everything. Let's go just by position from the back to the front, because even though I do think it's a sliding scale of priorities, like last week we did our top three, didn't we? We said, which positions do you need to address and all of that. Don't want to do that today. Let's talk about just from number one, from goalkeeper, what you would do and kind of move our way through the defense, the midfield and the attack.
All right, let's start then. David De Gea is currently number one. Now, there's a big split in the way supporters and maybe even the coaches look at this situation. David De Gea is set to, as it stands, sign a new contract on reduced terms. I don't necessarily feel that is the right decision. So what will we do? Do you want to go first or me?
I'll go first because I
Go on
think
then.
you're definitely more passionate about the goalkeeping situation than I am. But I do totally agree with you. Like, I wouldn't give David De Gea a new contract at this point. I would put the money into someone new that is going to be around for a long time and maybe can do more of the sweeper keeper things. So we were looking at candidates. I think we both do agree that De Gea probably should be shown the door, even though we do believe that he is going to stay. And I think that there's an option about what goalkeeper you go for. So I've spoken a lot this week about David Raya. And the reason why I've spoken about him is that when you look at his numbers, I get that people want this whole sweeper keeper thing, and it's not just a trend. It is what football is today. You need to play out from the back. You need quality there. But for me, Raya, when you look at his numbers, he matches De Gea in those kind of match-saving moments, which we know David can do. Obviously, did that at Wembley as well in the semi-final. Has done it all season long. Actually, has been already, I think, about to be nominated for goalkeeper of the year by the Premier League. You know, suddenly this goalkeeper that we don't want. You know, he might be goalkeeper of the year. But Raya, I think, is a gettable target, but also just someone I think that just ticks all those boxes for me. He's a player that I think can come to Man United and have an immediate impact. So for me, the first sign I make, if I'm making it and it's going to be a goalkeeper, I'm going to let De Gea go. Big hug and a kiss. Thanks, David, for all the time, and replace him with another David and bring in Raya and go down that route. And I think Raya is ready for that big move now.
On my side, I have said that I don't think, or I think this is a natural end point for David De Gea's Man United career. I still do believe that. Obviously, even if he does sign a new contract, they ain't going to sell him. This is your best time now to be able to offload and, you know, say thanks for the service. Let's part ways. Let's move on. I think De Gea, as we've seen, no matter what Erik ten Hag is saying publicly, he will give him a new contract. That's there to say. He rates other parts of his game. You know, his seniority, his leadership within the team, his status within the squad, his ability to save shots. But United are compromising the way that they want to play football under Erik ten Hag because David De Gea is in goal. I don't think anyone really disagree with that, unless you're very, very pro De Gea. What I would do, to be honest, is there's two goalkeepers for me out there. I would even take, it's at the point now where I think Raya and De Gea can maybe that's the option they'll go for, is maybe, you know, we'll take both and we'll see who wins. I would make it a clean sweep, and I would go Diogo Costa from Porto, because I feel like that is the signing that they've watched a number of times this season. I think there are, maybe I'd add Mike Maignan in there from Milan if they don't make the Champions League next season. But we are in a dreamland here. I'd probably still go Costa first, just because you need a goalkeeper who is going to fit in the modern game. His age is the right profile. Yes, there might be some sticking points, but we've seen Man City do it. You've seen Liverpool do it over the past 5-6 years. They've plucked out their goalkeeper that they think fits them, and they have ascended levels with it. And I think Costa is that one for Man United.
Yeah, look, I think the player profile is all important. You know, so if you're getting rid of someone, whoever that might be, and you want to replace them, you've got to make sure the profile fits the need. So, you know, we can talk about sweeper keepers forever, but it's about who ticks that boxes. Well, I said to you off camera, didn't I, Scott, about goalkeeper, and I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to hold on to it. There's now a lot of goalkeepers that can do the sweeping function and do it really well, but there's still only a smaller group of goalkeepers that can really save you in those match-saving moments. So I think this is where De Gea does have stock, and where De Gea is really popular with a lot of fans, for the exact same reason, Scott, why he's unpopular. You know, when we see him on the deck with the ball, you just said there, you know, there's no denying that we're kind of worse in that part of the game because of De Gea on the deck. I still think that's kind of absolutely crazy that the manager will give him a contract then, because the manager's got to give him a contract. So, like, the one person who doesn't seem to be overly bothered is Eric, and that's interesting. That's interesting. But do you think that he feels he can't replace De Gea? Because this is
I think in the current circumstances, if money was no object, he'd change his decision.
Yeah.
I think he's making this decision based on budgetary constraints and the
Yeah.
concerns over. I agree. It is not the first position that you need to replace. It's
Mm.
not. It's absolutely not. Striker is the first position.
Mm.
I'd maybe even put another central midfielder ahead of a goalkeeper. But we had this conversation the other day. Goalkeeper's third for me. Maybe it's lower down on Ten Hag's list, but that's just, this is a show about what we think and what our opinions are, right? So
Yeah,
I
totally.
think the reason why De Gea, if De Gea was on 150k a week, he would get his contract extended by a year and they'd do it in a year.
Yeah.
The difference is he's on 375
Yeah.
or whatever it is, and they have to make a decision. They can't trigger the extension because it's on too much money.
Totally.
That is the reason why they are having these conversations about an extended contract with a lower basic wage.
Because that's the payoff, really, in the sense that if you have a guaranteed money over a long period of time, then you might be happy with that. And I think the thing is with De Gea is that he doesn't want a wage reduction. Of course not. He's going to have to accept that if he wants to stay. But the thing that's changed, I think, with David De Gea is that he's really happy in Manchester. And he's happy to be here. And there's no doubt that the Premier League is the place to be. If you want to earn extra money through endorsements and whatnots and everything else that goes with it, you play in England. Going back to La Liga, which obviously he's not played at since he was 18, or anywhere else, it's a difficult gig. He might be able to get a gig in Saudi Arabia like Ronaldo and maybe be out there for a few years and earn some incredible money. But that's not really, I think, what he wants to do. I think he's happy to stay at United. So it's an interesting one. You're right. I think it's budgetary constraints, and that's the be all and end all of it. But when you think about how fundamental goalkeeper is now, I still think it's a strange decision if the manager looked at it and thought, do you know what, this really compromises my style of play, because I think we all believe that it does. It might then be more important to the manager than we actually believe. So I still think that goalkeeper is about third or fourth. What I do want to add there, Scott, you said Jogo Costa. I'm going to talk about it very quickly. One thing I worry about with Costa is, even though he's a really good all-round goalkeeper and absolutely the modern sweeper keeper, it's what he is. I think when you look at his numbers, there is definitely wiggle room there to say that he might not be an unmitigated success at Manchester United. He'd come to United. He's ready for that big move. There's no doubt about it. The reason why I would say Raya over him is that Raya is Premier League oven cooked ready. Raya knows what this division is. He's worked his way up. He's done it the hard way. And I think he's ready for that move. Costa is really, really good goalkeeper, but he's got a mistake in him. And he kind of reminds me a little bit of Fabian Barthez. When we signed Fabian Barthez all those years ago,
you could say like, every goalkeeper in the world.
Of course.
Single one.
And it is a feeling, and it's done on feelings. And feelings don't count anything in football. It's not really about that. But that's why I said about the metrics. I think that he does have handling errors in his game. And I do think that he might find that the Premier League is a completely different animal in terms of pace and how he works with it. So great on the deck. Definitely a kind of third centre back almost, can play around there, do the Edison function. Would he be a guaranteed success? For me, would he take you to the promised land guaranteed as a goalkeeper? I'm going with Raya.
Cheaper option as well. What I will say is I think United might, if they do end up extending De Gea's contract, will probably still go for Raya because he's the cheaper option, and they'll probably try and run the two alongside each other. I think that's what they'll do. But anyway,
but whether Raya will want that, whether Raya will want to potentially play second fiddle like that, I think that's the big
true.
thing.
He does have choice of first team football at other clubs.
He's got the choice of so many clubs, like all across Europe. He is going to be hot property in the £30 million market. So Man United can afford him. It's just whether you decide you want another Dean Henderson situation, which I know United don't want. United don't want to play that game again. Dino out the door, new goalkeeper in, but it's either going to be Butland level or you're going to go all in and potentially move De Gea on and bring in your next new number one.
Let's go to defence then. Position by position, left back, anything?
Not at the moment. Position by position, like it's funny, we were saying again off camera that this has changed radically in the last year or two, where we were always talking about flying fullbacks, what United needed to do to become like Man City, play progressive football and all of that. I think a lot of those frustrations have moved away a little bit, Scott. I don't know. What do you think?
That's the reason why I came to left back first, because I thought that was the conversation point that you didn't really need to have. They have options there. I know you're not a big fan of Malacia, but I think that's a position that you can You can maybe develop him. Switching across to the right, I actually wouldn't do anything. I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka's performances and his development in possession has come as a massive surprise. I think one thing you do have with Aaron Wan-Bissaka is that option to play in a game where you feel like you need to shut someone down.
Yeah.
And to be honest, you can play your own certain way. You can go for a Frimpong. You can keep Dallo there as first choice. But I think the two of them at the moment, and maybe this does change if they do get a huge takeover with unlimited funds and this kind of thing. Maybe that is a different conversation. As it stands now, I probably wouldn't. I'd even renew Aaron Wan-Bissaka, maybe. And I'd try and I think they're in conversations with Dallo about renewing, but he's only got a year left on his contract.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that goes. I think he can work with the both of them. And I don't think there's another right back out there currently that maybe is miles better than both of them that you can get.
I totally agree, and I'm very hot on Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Like the stuff that I've seen from him in the last few months has been shocking to the point where I might say that during the Ten Hag era, this first 12 months, he is the biggest revelation out of everyone. Like I think you could say Marcus as well, maybe up the top end. Marcus Rashford going from being will he still be at Man United next year to potentially the best player in the world for a period of time. That's huge, but that's kind of boring. Everyone's seen it, everyone knows it. But when you see Aaron Wan-Bissaka, there's still people I talk to outside of Manchester United, Scott, where we talk about Wan-Bissaka, and the first thing they say is, "Oh, he's rubbish, isn't he?" Because they're basing it on the last 2 or 3 years, and he's not been great. But my God, what a resurrection for the boy. He absolutely looks to me like a top-class right-back now, and someone that you can really teach, push forward, becoming a modern inverted right-back. Like, what? Never, ever would have signed up for that and said that that's where Wan-Bissaka will be. So I'm with you on that. I think we'll talk about centre-back a little bit now. And I think for me, this is where those two things maybe cross over, because the player that I would absolutely get, and I think that takes you to that next step towards the promised land at centre-back, I think we're all agreeing that maybe Harry Maguire might not be at the club, but I would definitely go for Jurriën Timber. So I think Timber, again, maybe a bit of a boring pick, but Timber can play right back. He can play centre back. He can play defensive midfield.
He can play left back as well.
He can play left back. He can make the tea and the coffee. He, can quote Shakespeare. He can do everything. So he's a kind of player, I think, that, again, you must improve your football intelligence by the positions. That's, for me, always the thing. And I think when you look at Timber, he's physically gifted. He's not the tallest, but he can play football. He knows how to play football on the deck. He's a 10-hard player. And he will give you, I think, Martinez numbers. So you think Martinez, how he's come to the football club and done what he's done in his first year at Man United, he just gives you assurance. He'll be an assured player every week. And if you've got a problem at right back and you're not happy with Wan-Bissaka because he's gone AWOL and Deleu's not playing well, you've got a really, really good footballer to drop in there. Because that kind of versatility is something that Man United have not had for a long time, Scott.
I like Timber. I do have some concerns, though. I know that the height conversation has been there since Lisandro Martinez was signed.
Yeah,
I know they did try to sign Timber before Martinez. Yeah. I think Erik ten Hag will really like to go for Timber. I much prefer him, actually. I know he's a centre back, but I do like the flexibility that he offers. But I think just the fact that you're going into Premier League matches with two centre backs of the height of both of those, I maybe think there's a risk you run there of being aerially found out.
Potentially. What I would say about that is that I think now in the Premier League, we're at a time that we never really thought that we would be at, where the general aerial threat in open play has gone. So the day of having wingers that got to the byline to cut the ball back and put it in the air for the striker to attack, even Haaland, who's like 8 foot tall, doesn't get those balls. It doesn't really happen. He can head the ball, and we know what he can do. But I think you're seeing that less and less as a fundamental in the Premier League. So as long as you're not like 5'3" at centre back or something like that, I think if you're 6 foot and you're athletic, and Timber's pretty much there, that he's just a smidgen under, I don't think it's a problem. I think the most important thing is to be able to play football on the deck. And that has become a thing in the Premier League. Not so long ago, Scott, I agree with you. I'd have totally said to you, you get done aerial, set pieces, whatnot. But my God, you have someone like Harry Maguire at the back. Harry Maguire is supposed to be an expert heading the ball, like came to Man United, best header of the ball in the universe and all of that. What hasn't helped you in the air at all? In fact, you are awful from set pieces and have never really got great at it. I think Timber is a progressive signing, and I wouldn't be frightened at all of putting him and Martinez out as your main two. I wouldn't be scared of putting him and Luke Shaw out together. And I would also, let's have a little kind of hug here for Victor Lindelof, because I think as well, Victor Lindelof, we'll talk about him later on, but I think he's doing well. He's doing what you want from a Ten Hag system. I would probably retain him as well.
I like Timber. I'm going to throw another name in as we are talking dream scenario here, right? And I've said on previous shows that I think centre-back is quite important because Rafa Varane's injury record, we're obviously in the middle now of Varane being on the sidelines again with another injury. You cannot rely on his fitness record currently. Now, what do you do with the centre-back? Because we've seen there's a big swell. Sign Kim from Napoli. I think what you're going to need to do here is look at somebody with a different age profile, a lot younger. I'm thinking 22, 23, but maybe even younger. And that's where my pick comes in. Antonio Silva from Benfica. Now, Benfica are going to dig their feet in here. I think they have a summer coming up where Gonzalo Ramos is the one that they would end up selling. But if there's not a market for him, who knows? Antonio Silva's in his breakthrough season with Benfica, currently 6'2", I believe. And he is one of what I'm looking to see here is you find another centre-back who is maybe ready to make the step up, not fully ready yet, but can be taught and blended with sharing the minutes with Rafa Varane. And I think that's the position that you got to try and get into. You've also got Victor Lindelof if you keep him around to maybe rotate in if Varane's out for God knows how long, which could be the case. But I think Antonio Silva, 19 years old, broken through at Benfica. They've had a great season in the Champions League. I know they've just been knocked out, but he's really maturing. He's only 19 since 20 in October. And I think, while it's a little bit young for a player, I think that there's a thought process in Portugal where this guy is going to be their centre-back for the next 15 years. They've got Ruben Diaz. They've got Inacio from Sporting as well. All of these players, Portugal are a very, 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 very good talent factory, especially Benfica. And I think this is the gem that's coming out of this Benfica system. It'll cost a lot of money. But like I say, we're living in a dream world today.
I don't think that's a dream. I think that is definitely an attainable footballer. Like I think United need to possibly go and find their Saliba. So like when you think about Saliba starting the season this year for Arsenal, I think most of the soothsayers would have gone, well, yeah, he's good. He's got good things about his game, and he's been developed for a while. He's not going to make Arsenal better, is he? Yes, he has made Arsenal a lot better from the back. Technicality on the deck. Again, you wouldn't say Saliba's a giant in the air, would you? Like when that ball goes over the top to Arsenal, it's not Saliba kind of competing with Haaland in the air or anything like that. What is most important is playing out from the back and doing it regularly and doing it in a way that helps your midfield and your attack. So that's for me why I go with Timber. I think the age profile is good, and I think he's ready to make the next step now. Like he decided to stay at Ajax. We know the reasons for that. But I think also what we can't overlook here is what the manager knows about him and what he knows about the manager. So that's massive for me. And that's why I really wanted Martinez to come. And I overlooked the height thing because for me, it's about expectations. I think Timber could come straight into Man United. And in day one, even though he'd have to get used to the Premier League and English football, and he'd have to maybe get used to the ball going over him now and then and having to deal with that, I think he knows exactly what Ten Hag wants and requires, and that is a huge part of any signing come to the football club.
I would just like to say, just because Rob is saying one player and I'm arguing another, I don't necessarily disagree with the picks that Rob is picking. And it's there's not one player only that's going to fit, but we are making our own picks for the show purposes. And obviously,
scouting. We're doing
scouting.
This is the Promised Land Scouting Network.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the Promised Land Scouting Network will extend to the comment section of our YouTube show. So please get them in. Do you disagree? Do you agree? Are there specific picks that you would like to see at Old Trafford? If budget is no issue, how many players do you think? I know I've asked for this already in the comments, and plenty of you have got in touch already, but just double down, get back in touch with us, and let's do it again. But I think down the line, they'd maybe even need another left-sided centre back, but maybe Luke Shaw is that one that can maybe do both for next season at least.
Yeah, and maybe beyond. Like you say, for next season, I look at Luke Shaw's profile of what he's doing at left centre back, and again, we just said there about Wan-Bissaka and being a shock. Someone said to you 6 months ago, a year ago, let's say, "Oh, Luke Shaw's going to be a really good left centre back." You just laughed it. We laughed it off. We just go, "What? That's mad. He's not a left centre back. He can never really play there. Yeah, maybe in a 3 on the left, he could do that, but not in a 4. And he looks so composed, against Brighton in the FA Cup semi-final. Just a worldly performance from the guy, and he's carrying an injury as well. So it's kind of like, I think Luke Shaw is an absolute stone cold valid left centre back now, and that takes some of the pressure off. I think with Martinez is that you've now got that rotational element.
Let's move on to the midfield area, because I feel like now I said on a show recently 6 in, 6 out. I don't know whether that is. I'm counting here. I don't know whether that is exact and how it's going to work out with this, because I don't know if I think I want 2 midfielders. I think I want 2.
Yeah.
The Casemiro replacement or the Casemiro rotation option, I think is a big deal because he's getting suspended a lot. As he gets older, he'll get more injured. And as we said on Monday's show, there's concerns about him getting up to speed if he's got some time out. Now, obviously, United is so much better with him there, but there is not, when he's not there, they do not have a direct replacement with the same skill set as him. So let's do defensive mid, Rob. Is there anyone for you? And I don't know how you want to put these in, because maybe there's a player that can fit both, and maybe you only want one. Maybe there's one that can do 6 and 8. Where do you stand on this? Are you looking at 1 player or 2?
Right. Well, this again comes down to systems. So I'm always thinking, what do Man United do? What do they do badly? And what can they do in the future? Like, where do you go? So Man United play 4-1-5 this year. They've played a bit of 4-3-3 when they've had injuries. They've had to do that. But I do think that the utopia would be to kind of have a defined 4-3-3 system next season and beyond that then competes with, let's say, Arsenal system, let's say Man City system, because that system is the trophy winning system over the last few years. We've seen that teams that do 4-3-3 really well every week consistently win lots of trophies. That's the way it's gone. So that's my ideal starting point. So you talk about central midfield in the defensive function and playing the number 6. Let's call it the number 6. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Casemiro in year 1 has definitely been a great sign-in. He's shown what he can do, but he has also shown, I think, where some of the fragility is in his game. And that is that he's not actually brilliant at all the defensive functions. He's quite good at covering the ground and reading the game, and that's why he's so good at it. But I think you need some more energy in there. So you need Fred. I think I said this last week, Fred energy without Fred feet. So you need someone in there that can kind of do the job and can kind of do the 6-8 functions. That's the way I look at it, because you need that versatility to be able to change things around. So the player I would sign, and this is, I've not spoken to him about him much as it stands, and so people who have watched our content will not feel it yet. But the player I would sign, if I could sign tomorrow, the first central midfielder, is not Frankie de Jong. Not Frankie de Jong. I don't want Frankie de Jong. I want Lavia from Southampton. So people are going to go, what? But I think there'll be plenty of people going, yes. So his stock has risen over recent weeks, and it's ironic, isn't it? Because Southampton are pretty bad. I know they didn't help Arsenal the other day, but they're not a great team. But you saw what Lavia offers and what people saw in him at Manchester City, and why Manchester City were pretty unhappy about having to sell him and letting him go in the end. But of course, players want to go and do their thing, don't they? You know, Jadon Sancho did that, didn't he? Went to Dortmund to find his role in life in football. But I think when you look at Lavia, a ball playing number 6 who looks as comfortable at number 8, who can advance the ball, who's athletic, who is really the closest thing I think you can buy on the market now today to someone like Camavinga. Man United dropped the ball when they let Camavinga go and they had a £19 million deal love and cooked for him. They let him go. Real Madrid took him. You're going to have to live with that forever. You can get away with that if you go and sign someone like Lavia. He's going to cost. You know, Southampton won't let him go for free. But fingers crossed, sorry, Saints fans, if you get relegated, might be a lot easier getting him out of that football club. And I think he would love to come back to Manchester, obviously from the Manchester City system. And I think that he could be the guy that maybe ends up being what you wanted Paul Pogba to be. Is that a ball player from deeper who just has incredible control elements? I don't know if you saw that in the game against Arsenal. He just ran rings around them from just he was getting the ball off the centre backs and just going do. Oh look, now we're in attack. He's a massive reason why Southampton competed in that game. I think he could be brilliant at Man United. He could be a dream signing that in a year's time we're going, hang on, this guy's actually probably worth 100 million. That's how good he is. He's not there today, but he could be there very, very quickly.
He's only 19
very
years
young.
old. And the thing with this is, right, I know that if there's people listening to this, you are shouting your favoured player. I find it really difficult to pick one. There's a few. So we've mentioned Frankie there. Obviously, different type of player. I think United do need some steel. We went on record on this show a few weeks ago, maybe even quite recently, of saying, well, I think this can happen anyway. I think Declan Rice can do both. I think you can definitely develop him into both. But obviously, we're doing... Maybe that's not popular in the comment section. I would love Declan Rice, personally. Not necessarily my pick for this, but he is in a list of players that I would like. He will come at a premium, probably the most expensive of the lot. But there are 2 other players I would like to mention. There's a lot of popularity for João Palhinha from Fulham. You probably missed the boat on him, though, because Fulham signed him last summer for 17 million quid or whatever it was. He's probably now, maybe they'd sign for about 40. Maybe that's still good business, but he's proven he's very, very much adapted to the Premier League. Good age as well, and could come in as a rotation option. Can play a 2, a double pivot. Can play as number 6. Great tackler. Good on the ball, good energy. I think he'd make a great fit. The one I bolded, though, you've picked Lavia. His replacement, João Palhinha's replacement at Sporting is Manuel Ugarte, who is Uruguayan international. He has about 8 caps. Young player, 22 years old. Really strikes me as he's got that mean streak in him, though. He's got really good feet. And he's, again, all of these players we're listing, Declan Rice, Romeo Lavia, Ugarte, Palhinha, they're all players. This is, I said this on another podcast I do, there's going to be a big shuffle. A lot of Premier League clubs want a number 6, number 8. A lot of Premier League clubs want these players that we've listed. Chelsea want one. Arsenal want one. Manchester City will probably be remodeling their midfield. Liverpool want 2 or 3 players. Tottenham probably want 1, maybe more advanced. But maybe I like Ugarte. I like Palhinha. I like Declan Rice. Sorry if I'm copping out, but I feel like the Rice is the expensive option there, and you've got 2 other players who can maybe come in a little bit cheaper. And I think they all do the job. Lavia is a great shout as well.
Yeah, look, now that we know that probably West Ham are probably safe, just about, makes it maybe a little bit more difficult to get Declan Rice out there at a price that you're happy with. But I'm still all over Declan Rice. I think that he can give you so much upside from the 6 and the 8 positions. I think the thing is, I'm still refusing, and I always do, to go down this defensive midfield route, because I don't think it's a thing. I think when you're a number 6, you're supposed to be a number 6 who's as good as number 8. That's how it is. It's about technicality. And I think with Casemiro, going back to that, one of the things with Casemiro is one thing we always will know about him is that he's not getting any younger. So that is going to be something you have to deal with in, say, the next 12 to 24 months. That might affect maybe his levels. But I think if you bring in someone like Lavia, and if you think about the price range, if you could get him, even like I'm talking big money now, so say sub 50, right? That's a lot of money for Southampton, but sub 50, and Southampton get relegated, so you might get him for 30s to 40s or something like that. I don't think there's a risk in this lad at his age. I really don't. I think you can bring him in and make him work in your system. And I think he would shine a lot more than making any errors. When you think about what Fred brings you when Fred comes into the team, or Scotty, or any of those players. So I think Lavia is a really easy upgrade. And if I had to choose between Lavia and Declan Rice, I think I choose Lavia. And some of that is the price, but I actually think the upside and the potential and the talent, it lies with Lavia, definitely. He's shown, I think, this year in the Premier League that he is ready, and he's young and hungry. And I think Declan Rice is also like that, but a bit older, of course, and a bit more round the block. But I think Lavia is the guy. I think if you put him in there, the other player I would add to that, you said Paulinho, and I think that's a great shout, for me, is McAllister. So I think when you look at him, if you want somebody to do the real number 8 function and be good at the 8, but really give you a bit more value towards the 10 and give you something extra there, I think McAllister this season, I've been surprised. Like, he wasn't my favourite a year ago, but I've watched so many minutes of his games, and I thought against Man United, I thought against us in Wembley in the semi-final, I thought he was really good. I think you can see the energy he brings and the control. Again, these are the kind of players I want to add, Scott. If you add these types of players, you are definitely going to be somewhere near the title contenders.
We are naming players here who are going to cost a lot of money. I would note, though, that you get your squad sorted now, and then you're going to have to change your transfer policy and start picking up the likes of McAllister direct, the likes of Lavia direct, the likes of all of these players direct. Moises Caicedo, they could have signed him for £4 million.
Yeah.
You know,
but when Caicedo was on the market, I'll just add in this. When I did shows on Moises Caicedo, we did actually a lot of depth on him, and we were like, "This would be a really good signing for like £4 million. This is a no-brainer. Go get him." And Man United went no, and the reason they said no is because, again, do we put value into development projects? Like, is this where we want to go, or do we want to just win now? So I think you have to balance. I don't think that one or the other is the choice. I don't think United could become Brighton overnight. They're a system that they buy low, sell high, and that's part of their way of life. Man United should do some of that better. But I think if you look at Lavia and say Kobe Manu together in years to come, that to me screams titles. So that's the way I kind of look at it. It's kind of McAllister, as you said. I think you're right. You would have preferred to have got him at the bottom end of his value rather than maybe the top. But I think, again, in another year or two, McAllister might be a 60, 70 million pound player. I think he's that good. I really
he already is.
Well, he's already is, but it depends what price you could get him if he's coming out of that football club. So I think that the performance against Man United in the FA Cup, I think there were lots of good things I saw in that as well. And I thought, yeah, he is the real deal. And I think many people still don't maybe give him his flowers for what he is, probably because he is at Brighton.
Like I say, and I've said this on the show in the past as well, even when United were doing well with Casemiro, Eriksen, Bruno Fernandes in the midfield, the balance is not perfect for me. I think this is very much the way it is at the moment. I don't think there's enough legs in there. I think United can get bypassed in midfield quite easily because Eriksen himself is the wrong side of 30. Casemiro is the wrong side of 30. Bruno Fernandes is obviously got a lot of energy, but he's better off further up the pitch. There is Marcel Sabitzer. There's a number of players already on the books at United. But I think there's two profiles there. I think there's an understudy to Casemiro and there's a ball-playing 8. Maybe you can get one of them to do both jobs. But really, if you don't trigger the option on Sabitzer and you look at the players that you could sell to raise money, you probably need 2 midfielders. So it might be a case of you sign Sabitzer for cheap plus 1 midfielder, or you don't, and you get a younger option.
And that goes back to the goalkeeper debate. Like do you spend the money on those midfielders? Like I think it's vital. I think that midfield function, United's weakness is still the ball playing function. I think you need to be ball players in 6, in 8, in 10, in wide, and up top. You need ball players. That's how you win titles. You don't win it by being good at it sometimes, or you bring someone in and then they like, oh look, we're worse this week on the ball. You're like, that's an ideal scenario. No, it isn't. Have ball players. So I think that's where Lavia comes in. That's where I also think McAllister comes in. I think they all fit the profile of what Man United need to go to the next level. If we're saying that Fred's not your answer, if we're saying McTominay's not your answer, I don't think Sabitzer's the answer, even though I do like him and I'd probably retain him for a cheap fee. But how do you get to the promised land? I think Lavia is the guy that gets you there.
I would take 2, is all I'm saying. Anyway,
Lavia and McAllister. They're my two. Lavia and McAllister.
I've named a few players on that list. Whichever combination United go with, if it's a combination of those, I'm fine. If they're looking further afield,
Paulinho, what a player he is!
He's looking a very good player. Let's move further up the pitch then, Rob. United have Ahmad out on loan. Obviously, that's a conversation for another day. But there's a what do you do with him conversation brewing there because he's having a good season. United side Anthony last summer, left-footed winger on the right-hand side. I think he offers a lot of balance. Some United fans maybe don't like him. I think once his decision-making sharpens up and once he gets his feet under the table, I think he'd be a really good signing. He's already been called a flop, etc., etc. But I really think he adds a lot to the United system. But there are players in other positions across the front, excuse me, that maybe do need to be either replaced or added. So we'll do striker in a bit. I'll call this one the forward, maybe wide forward. Is there a player in this position that you would like United to sign?
Yes, there is. And I have a theory behind it, so I will try and explain it as eloquently as I can. I think, we've talked before about Ahmed. I think he's done really well at Sunderland. I do think that there is a potential there to bring him back, for him to be a part of your rotation. I don't think Ahmed wins you the title. Not yet, anyway. Like incredibly good young talent when we signed him, potentially the best in the world in his position. But we're waiting and seeing on that. I think with Garnacho, we've seen that Garnacho has given United, again, a really nice problem this year, that he's mature beyond his years. He can come off the left. Never really seen him do any central work. Like he did used to do that at youth level. And when he was at Atletico Madrid, I think that was his role. He actually played as a 10 quite often. You can kind of see that in some of his game. But we've got used to him as a wide function, haven't we? So for me, we talk about the promised land. How do we get there? What is the issue in that front line at the moment? So we'll do Martial in a little bit and we'll do striker in a little bit, like you said. But I still think that if we start with Rashford on the left, and that's easy, and say Garnacho as the understudy or Garnacho as the other option, and then on the right, you've got Anthony, who I actually think has done all right this year. I don't really see why people have criticised him so overtly. They don't like the way he plays. Well, that's tough on you. I think Ten Hag does. I think the problem in that front area is, I was going to joke, no, it's not Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes is not the problem. I think Bruno's a really good number 10 in that forward area, and I would obviously retain Bruno. The player I think is the issue, and I think it's probably an easy call at the moment, is Jadon Sancho. So Jadon Sancho came to your football club. He was going to be your next number 7. We have backed him all the way since he's been at the club, but let's not pretend that at the end of this season, Jadon Sancho would have been at Man United for 2 years. And in that 2 years, he's done nothing. Nothing. Zero. We've had to work hard to get him anywhere near serviceable, not even playing. And I think, Scott, this is going to be the story as well about, when we talk about how do Man United get better to be title contenders. Because as it stands, it's not Jadon, is it? As it stands, Jadon's going to have to really come up levels and show that he's suited to the Premier League and the rigours that go with it. So that means I think you still need a wide player. Like I think if you lose him, yeah, you could bring back Ahmed, but I think the pressure would be too much to just bring him into rotation straight away. I think Garnacho will play more minutes next year. I think that's obvious. I think Anthony's your starter on the right. But the player that I would bring in for those forward positions, and he is predominantly left side but can play across there, is a guy that we saw at Wembley for Brighton, another Brighton player, and that is Mitoma. So I think Mitoma is not someone
Rob wants Man United to turn into Chelsea.
No, you just said a minute ago. United need to spot these players beforehand, like kind of a bit like Brighton. So, we probably should have spotted Mitoma a few months ago or a few years ago.
What a
That's
find
why
that is, by the way. It's incredible.
Exactly what a find it is. But do you know what as well? It's not a find. It's actually like a science. You look at these things and profiles, and you say, "This is what we need." Now, the thing is with Jadon is that there was a punt there with Jadon in the sense that we knew that his metrics in the Bundesliga were amazing, and he looked amazing as well. He started playing for England. He was amazing. It's kind of like an easy call, isn't it? But was he really what we needed? I don't know. Like, this is the thing, when you look at what you got coming through and maybe you're looking at the Garnachos, can you predict these things before they happen, Scott? So in our reality now where we are, if you don't keep Jadon Sancho, so you just say the manager's had enough. He goes, do you know what? He's not serviceable. He's not a starter. So I need a starter that can play the role with Rashford, but also play at 10, play in the wider right role, and also dribble into the box and get me that advancement that we seem to want Jadon to do. This is what we want Jadon to do: dribble into the box, be a creator. The profile of player you want is Mitoma. That's what he is. That's the kind of player he is, and he's going to cost you a lot of money. So that's what it is. So I'm not saying that he's gettable as it stands, but again, the jump from Brighton to Man United is an attractive one for a player like that. Also, the other side of this, in marketing terms, is that a player who's a superstar from Asia with a football club like Man United, who are massive in Asia, kind of does marry up as well. So you might pay an extra bit of money for that because that opens doors. So, but for me, it's about football, and it's about what can Mitoma offer you. And I think if you put Mitoma in there as a pocket player who can play the 10 and give Bruno some respite in having to do some of that work, and have Rashford as your wide player, and then Garnacho coming in, dovetailing, and then on the right, you got Anthony, and maybe dropping Ahmad in as the 10 at times. Been brilliant as a 10 this year. Absolute find at 10. I think Mitoma is your full stop on that sentence. He's the guy that can kind of take you from being a team that might score every week to a player that will link with your new number 9, who we're going to talk about in a minute, and be really good in that function and help Bruno as well. So kind of jury's out on Jadon, but I don't know what you think, Scott, about Jadon, but I'm running out of patience, and I think Erik ten Hag is as well.
I do see your point. It's a conversation that needs to be had. I would give him another year, personally.
Yeah.
I think there's no automatic place in the team for him, but obviously he does need to. The argument is he was bought. He was meant to be. It was meant to be Rashford left, Martial through the middle, and Jadon Sancho on the right. He was bought and this is indicative, I suppose, of United's scouting network as it's been, and United's transfer team as it has been over the past 10 years before things changed and Ed Woodward left. This was the dream. Oh, Jadon Sancho's a right winger. Well, it turns out he isn't. Turns out he's a left winger. You probably should have understood that before you signed him.
Correct.
He played both sides at Dortmund, but obviously you get a lot more space in the Bundesliga. His numbers were good on both sides. He did well in the Champions League. We know there's talent there. I think there's a mental issue there with him, and that's the case for a lot of players, that something needs to switch in their brain, in their head. They need to kind of get their head on it. I think Sancho's got another year. I would give him another year personally, but it doesn't mean to say that I wouldn't go and try and sign a player of that ilk that you're naming Mitoma with. Now, Mitoma is better for me as a left-sided player, left-sided attacker, can play other functions. But you've got Marcus Rashford, you've got Garnacho there. I think you have two options here. You either go with your main striker plus an understudy who's young, or you go with a player who's quite young who can fill Anthony's side if he's not there, and also fill in a number of other positions. So I'm going to name Mohamed Kudus from Ajax as my pick. Now, left-footed, he plays on the right, he plays through the middle. He's got a banging goal at Anfield. I think it was earlier this season. Got a hell of a strike on him. Really good feet. Can also play in the 10. I think this is the kind of player for me who is another Ajax player. Erik ten Hag loves Ajax, and people will say, oh, Erik ten Hag at Ajax didn't really get on with Kudus that well. I've had it confirmed back. He still doesn't mean that, he still likes him. He knows what he can do. It was just a case of he didn't develop at the right speed for ten Hag to use him at Ajax. But he's had a good season. 11 goals in the league, 18 in all comps in 38 games for a player who can play multiple positions. can dovetail with Harry. Oh, I'm giving spoilers away. Can dovetail with the striker, can play in maybe Bruno Fernandes's role if he needs to rotate out, can also play instead of Anthony. Maybe he's the right profile of player to come in and, be specific for certain games. Probably won't demand to play every single game as well. That's the pick that I would maybe make. Mohamed Kudus from Ajax, and they were interested in him in January as well. If United can get it done early in the summer, he'd probably end up being a lot cheaper than in August.
He's a great shout, and he can play that multifunctional 10-9. He really can. He can do those things and play from the wider areas. And I think, like if you're looking alternatives to someone like a Mitoma, who's a creator and a dribbler and can do those things, I think you're right. Mitoma is definitely more left-sided. There's no doubt about it. I know we all prefer Marcus left, but we can also have to put in the caveat that Marcus can play right. So Marcus can give you an option on the other side if you say want Mitoma to run that channel and run in there. But it doesn't look great for Jadon. Like you're saying there, give him another year. Well, if you give him another year and it's a bust, then that's 3 years of playing someone £250,000 a week to not give you any metrical returns, no statistical returns of any real worth. And so I think 2 years is always a good kind of period to make a call on someone. You can do it sometimes in 12 months, but I think 2 years is a good kind of window into these players' souls and how they do stuff. I think after 2 years with Jadon, I'm not really seeing the stuff that I think is of the standard. Like, again, this show's about how do you get to the promised land? How do you become title contenders? I don't think Jadon would get in at Arsenal as it stands. He definitely wouldn't get in at City. So can he be a starter at Man United? Well, the answer is yes, but not the way he is at the moment. And then you've got to decide to cut your losses. I don't think we're seeing anything from Erik ten Hag where he's really promoting the boy, like where he's thinking, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to run with him and give him a chance. Where maybe we do see that with someone like Anthony. When Anthony has a bad game, he very rarely gets dropped, does he? Anthony still comes back in, does the function, does the job. Fans might not like it, but the manager's okay with it. And that's what really counts. Jadon, on the other hand, semi-bad game, maybe doesn't do what he's doing, gets pulled at half-time, gets pulled after 60 minutes, doesn't play the following match. I will say this to him, great penalty in the penalty shootout against Brighton. I know we talk about mental toughness a lot, and that's a moment where he could have just not done what he needed to do, but he helped United win that penalty shootout. And I do hope he comes good. I've still got that about it for me, but I am looking at this from a football standpoint only, Scott. And from a football standpoint, he is not giving you what you bought him for. He was bought for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's not been bought for this system. And when I did a show on him before we signed him, I looked at the metrics, and the metrics absolutely showed that he's much better from the left than he was from the right. And everyone in the comments was saying to me, no, but he plays on the right. Now, he's better on the left. But at the moment, he's definitely not a differential with Rashford on the left.
He also had Ashraf Hakimi down the right side.
Massive, absolutely
he's made a hell of a difference.
Huge having fullbacks that help drive the ball and do it. And this is what we said, like Man United's fullback problem is no longer, let's say, as big a problem as it was. But then you've got to fit the wide players with them. You've got to fit, like it's got to be a kind of perfect chemistry. And I look at Jadon left and right, and he doesn't fit anyone. He doesn't fit the striker. He doesn't fit the midfield. He doesn't fit those things. And that's just bad luck on him. He has to change, Scott, to be valid. And that's definitely the challenge for him. Because otherwise, I don't think this manager sticks around with it. You used the word last week, ruthless. You want to see Man United be ruthless. I think this manager's going to look at Jadon and be ruthless and say, you don't get me near a title next year, so I'm going to flog you and going to find someone that does.
Yeah, fair point. I just think there's no market there for him. Personally, I think English clubs are on a different level, and you don't want to see him turn up for a cut price fee at Chelsea, for example, and then he hits the ground running, and you've taken a loss on him because he ain't. Maybe the only other place he can go is Germany, back to Dortmund, but unless they sell Jude Bellingham this summer, they ain't going to have the money. Anyway. It's not a direct comparison. Sorry, just to jump in there. It's not a direct comparison, but I think when you look at, say, Raheem Sterling, how great he was at Man City and what he achieved at Man City, and then he went to Chelsea
and the issues he's had at Chelsea. So I would not be afraid to sell Jadon Sancho, who's failed for you over 2 years, to a direct competitor. It doesn't mean that they're going to go there and rip it up. That's anxiety that makes us think those things. But I think his marketplace would probably be Bundesliga. I think you'd have to probably go back to maybe boards he's treaded before, or potentially La Liga or even Serie A, where it's a little bit slower, a little bit less problematic. I'm not quite sure whether he is Premier League talent. He just hasn't returned the numbers in the games that he's done. So for me, that's the issue. And that's why I look at Mitoma. He's certainly returned the numbers this year. So he's shown that he's ready for a next step.
Final player. We know central striker is the position that is top of the list. Is it top of your list? It's top of mine.
Has to be. It has to be. You know, Man United have somehow got near the top 4 and nearly, obviously, getting through that and winning a trophy and getting to a final of an FA Cup and a quarter final in Europe with no striker. They've spent the whole season doing this without a number 9. So Anthony Martial, people can debate that. That's fine, what you want from him. But he's missed something like 45 games this season. And United somehow, Erik ten Hag, it is a miracle that you got here somehow. It really is a miracle. And you've got to go and find your number 9. So it's got to be, I think, priority number 1, 2, and 3.
My answer here is go and get Harry Kane. Just do it. The timing is perfect. Tottenham will put up their front of, we don't want to sell to another rival in the Premier League. We've done it time and time again. It will require Harry Kane to push for it. I think there's probably a willingness on his side to get out. I think there's a Premier League goal scoring record that he would like to break. I think that's a big thing in his career, but he'd also like to compete for trophies. I think the boat to City has gone now that they've signed Haaland. I think Chelsea is maybe the other option for him, but at the same time, he doesn't want to burn his bridges completely with Spurs. No. And I think if you're looking at moving across London to Chelsea, that is a good way to do it. I think the timing has never been better for Man United to get a hold of Harry Kane. Now, that is people are divided on Kane, but I just think there are we've named a number of players here who are 19, 22, 23. You can sign those kind of players, but ultimately you do need in certain positions ready-made to go now. And I think striker is that position. Harry Kane for me is, if you can get him for 80, 90 million, even pushing 100 if it's over a few years, I think is going to be worth it for me. And I think that is where I would go first. Get that deal done as soon as you can. And you have 25 Premier League goals a season for at least the next 3 years.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of players here who I think are like ready in the next step of your development to kind of be the next big thing or do what they do positionally. But I do think that in the middle of all of this, you need to look at your marquee signing, and that's going to be your number 9. There's lots of options out there, especially in the younger side of the market, 18, 19, 20. There's a lot of young players. You mentioned Kudus, who I think is potentially someone that you could bring in who could be a goal scorer and play through the middle and to give you something slightly different. Also, don't forget about Marcus Rashford. Marcus Rashford can play multiple positions across the front, has done more striker things this year, but I think shows that doesn't really have the pressing metrics for what you would want. Harry Kane, we're going to agree on. We're going to agree on Harry Kane because there's no point doing Osimhen content. Like, everyone knows what Osimhen is. He's brilliant. He's absolutely a worldie and can give you certain things. We've talked Osimhen down at times about coming from Italy and coming to play the Premier League. I think those things still count. I think with Harry Kane, this is the perfect storm for Harry Kane. You're right. I don't think Chelsea would fit him. Like, he's not going to leave Tottenham and go to Chelsea the same way he's not going to go to Arsenal. Like, he wouldn't do it. Those clubs are direct competitors, and he would burn everything he ever built at Tottenham as a Tottenham boy. But then it kind of narrows the angles down, doesn't it? Because City have got their striker in Haaland. I still think Liverpool could compete, but probably haven't got the money or the wage structure to do it.
They need midfielders.
They need midfielders. They've got other priorities. And I think that they've chucked the money at Nunes and they've chucked the money at Gakpo. And that's the way they're going to have to go. They're going to have to like it or lump it. It's just what it is. So I don't think they're going to be in for Kane as it stands. Potentially, maybe, but no. But that really leaves, I think, 2 clubs. Us and obviously the richest club in the world trademark there, Newcastle United. So I've always seen this link with
PSG
Newcastle
and
there.
Bayern from abroad, by the way. But
PSG and Bayern from abroad, but like I don't think he gets up in the morning and goes, oh, I'd love to play for PSG. The PSG, that's
yeah,
exactly what I want to do. Oh, do you know what? I want to be a Bayern Munich superstar in the Bundesliga. No, I don't think he thinks any of those things. And he would have to probably, in real terms, Scott, take a pay cut. It's the truth. Those clubs will not pay the kind of money, even at the top end of their divisions. He can make more money in the Premier League. Absolutely, wherever it is. So he's got to choose wisely. And I think Newcastle are ready to make that step. They're ready for a Kane type signing. And I think we will see that next year, that they make big signings and signings that frighten us at Manchester United, depending on who our owners are. But I do think even without an ownership change for Man United, I think the Glazers could get Harry Kane and they could put this project in front of him, in front of his lap, and say, you are our next Robin van Persie. We believe that you can take us to the title. You're going to be a leader. You're going to be the number one shirt seller, Kane number 9, and you're going to see little boys and girls running around on football pitches all over planet Earth in that red shirt with Harry Kane's name and number on the back. And I think Harry Kane would like a bit of that. I think Harry Kane gets the platform he wants. He gets the social pull. He gets the money. He gets the contracts. He gets the kudos. But he gets the opportunity to win a title. And I think that he can carry on. He'd love that, I think, coming to United and still being the primary goal scorer and having all that creativity around him, linking up with Mitoma, linking up with Bruno Fernandes, getting Anthony an outlet for Anthony, helping Rashford make those runs, dropping deep, dropping in. It's kind of his dream scenario that I think he'd like at Spurs, but he's never going to get it there. You're never going to get that at Spurs, Harry. So come to Manchester United and get what you want, and that is win a Premier League title. And I think he can take Man United back to the promised land.
Good final line, actually. Rob, we were going to do the players that United would offload, but we said we'd do 45 minutes to an hour, and we've already gone over an hour. So I think...
It's easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
They think?
Shall I do it pretty quick?
Yeah.
Dean Henderson out on loan.
Yes.
Sell. Alex Telles. Sell.
Yes.
Eric Bailly. Sell.
Yes, please.
Release Axel Tuanzebe.
Hannibal.
Yes.
No, keep
him,
Hannibal.
Give him another loan. De Gea, release.
Yep.
Harry Maguire, sell.
Yes.
Victor Lindelof, jury's out.
Keep. Change my mind. You can't get rid of everyone. I know we'd love to do.
I keep Lindelof as well. Yeah. But there is a market for him probably.
Yeah.
Phil Jones finally released.
Goodbye.
Brandon Williams can cop a bit of money back for him.
Goodbye. Yeah.
Scott McTominay raises a bit of money.
Gone.
Donny.
Gone.
And then you have Jadon Sancho, who you would do. I wouldn't.
Well, you might have to, is what I'm saying.
Anthony Martial is the other one. I think he has had more than enough time.
Yeah.
Will be a difficult player to sell. Very, very difficult player to sell. But it might be at the point now where you just have to cut your losses and sell for 15 million quid.
Yeah, I always disagree on these things because there's always a buyer out there. If you're selling and you can make it work, there's always a buyer out there. And I think Anthony Martial's metrics show that his goal to game to minute ratio is as good as anyone in Europe. So you could find a market for him. But again, he would be a player that I'd be okay with retaining as long as you carry investing in these positions. Like I'm not too fussed about Martial. I don't think he's the problem. Like we just said there, we've just named a dozen players just off the top of our heads who you'd want to get rid of. But again, the truth is that you won't clear out in that fashion. So you might get rid of 6. And there's an easy...
half of those could go for free.
Oh, it's an easy turnover there. Like I said this on last week's show, that it's very easy that there'll be transfer turnovers here, that you won't even have to force out the club, Scott. You just have to say goodbye and do it and wave them off.
Final question. Not a big one. Anthony Elanga,
gone.
What would you do? I'd sell him.
Gone. Yeah, and there's a market for him. There's a market
Premier
for
League,
him.
lower league market. Everton, if they stay up.
Not a bad player, but not going to get you to the promised land, which is what this show's about. So, I think that's what I mean. There's a lot of the squad where it's a case of trimming the fat. No kind of overreaction and no kind of you must do this, that, and the other. If you want to raise funds, Scott, that's when you might have to look at Jadon. And as you said about marketplaces, you'd have to take a big loss on him and a hit. But if you want to get that wage off your books for the next 3, 4, 5 years, which is what that deal would be, that saves you millions. And if you could get 40 for him, 30, 40, 50. I don't know. There's always going to be some taker somewhere for a player who's got a profile like him. You know, you could get back in the English squad, and in a year's time, he could be very, very good for you, couldn't he? So I think there are gamblers out there in football, especially chairmen, and they do gamble, and they do look at players like that and go, yeah, maybe.
Let us know how you would get Man United back to the promised land with your imaginary transfer business. That has been what today's show is about. I've enjoyed it. Thank you, Rob, for another show. We hope you enjoyed the bonus episode that we are offering back to you that we missed a few weeks ago. But let us know in the comments who you would... Do you disagree with any players that you'd like to buy or any... Remember, we've taken realism out of this, really. We know that what we've just done is not going to happen. So I'd like to just repeat that. But maybe
some of it
if Man United were an efficient football club from top to bottom, maybe you could do this in one summer because there are enough Premier League clubs out there with money to take half of the players that United would like to sell. And then you never know how much of a cash position you create around FFP, etc., etc. So yes, let us know who you would take, who you would sell, what's realistic, what isn't. Any final thoughts, Rob?
No, I think they're all gettable. I think everyone we mentioned there has a price. It might not be the price you want to pay, but I think, let's be honest, like, again, the Anthony scenario proves that Man United can push the boat out in terms of valuation to get a player if the manager really wants him. So I think there's a lot of players in there that you might have to burn a load of cash to get, but go get them, because this is about football. It's about being better, isn't it? And yeah, I think if there was one player in there now, I might just say, Scott, to end the show, it's Lavia. He's the player. I look at Lavia and I think generational talent. I think he could be a midfielder that you build the whole football club around, and then you're not paying 130 million for Jude Bellingham.
Fair play. Jude Bellingham not on the list.
Nope. We do hear that the manager is not particularly high on him. Like,
do you? I don't.
I think the thing is, he's a player you're going to think about and look at, and you look at it. But I think when you really, really dig down to deeper detail about the price and the profile, yeah, the profile, great. If Jude Bellingham could be the best midfielder in the world, there's no doubt about that. He's got that upside. But I do think there's Jadon Sancho problems there. Like, you just don't know yet. You don't know if he would be a success in the Premier League just because he looks really good at Dortmund. So I think it's a great midfielder. Bellingham, I'd love him at Man United. I'm not quite sure I'd pay 120 for him. Would you pay for that price, Scott, when we're talking about numbers?
No, I wouldn't. I think there's a chance he signs a new deal at Dortmund. I said this for weeks. Signs a new deal at Dortmund and comes on the market for 80-odd million next summer with a release clause.
Yeah.
I've been saying that for a long time. Some people are starting to wake up to it. But maybe that's a conversation to revisit, but not for this summer, because Dortmund are going to want a hell of a lot of money this time around for him.
Yeah.
Maybe the picture changes in a year, but we will see. Now, yes, get back in touch with us. Leave a comment, please, on the YouTube video if you've watched on YouTube. We run twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. We'll be back on Friday this week after the Tottenham game for more unpacking of what Man United do on the pitch. Head over to the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment for us, or listen on audio platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, etc., etc. And follow us and get in touch on Twitter as well, @_Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B, and @PromiseLandMU for the show. That is it from us. Thank you very much for listening to another Promised Land podcast. We'll see you very soon, everyone.